Good evening, everyone. I am Victoria Wratten, the founder of EPAA, and I know if you're watching this from our Facebook group, then you are members and you will know who I am. But thank you to Jackie Hall for joining us this evening. Delighted to be really excited about this interview, actually. And I'm sorry we couldn't do it yesterday, but we are now live streaming to our Facebook group, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel. Just to make our guests feel all that extra little bit nervous and excited.
No pressure, Vic, no pressure.
So for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, we are running a live interview series, which you can watch, obviously, and catch up on anything you've missed, with EPA members and also networks and trainers that we work closely with. But it was to give a kind of broader spectrum of PAs and EAs and their backgrounds and careers. We often hear a lot from celebrity PAs or PAs that work for well-known entrepreneurs, which is fantastic. I always get really excited hearing those stories, but I get equally as excited as hearing career stories like yours, Jackie, and I can't wait to just start delving into that. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us. And as you'll know from watching other interviews, please can you tell us where you're based in the UK and kind of spending lockdown?
I am based in London, specifically Islington, so I'm sort of right in the centre of it all. So, and I'm living on my own, so...
Wow, and how has that been? Because actually a number of our members have said they're on, they live on their own and have been predominantly on their own during lockdown and stuff. How has that been for you?
While I'm a social creature, I also do like my own company. So, and when I lived in Australia, I ended up, after my mum passed away, I ended up living on my own then. So I'm sort of used to it. But as much as I'm dying to get out and do stuff, I'm quite happy to be able to sit at home and catch up on things I never get around to doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you have got a bit of an accent there and you've referred to Australia, so we'll get into that and your whole kind of background, your career story and how you ended up moving to the UK. But can you tell us a bit about where you're working at the moment, Jackie? Because you're actually in the UK public sector, which is working really, really hard at the moment.
Oh, we are. But I've got to correct you first, Vic. You have the accent, not me.
True. I love it. Do you know what? I'm obsessed with accents and I absolutely love them. I mean, even in the UK, we've got tons of different accents.
Yeah.
I love hearing accents from around the world. But anyway, I digress.
Yes, and I've forgotten the question. So where am I now?
In terms of, where are you working and who are you working for?
I am currently working at the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, which apparently in the old days had the name the Department of Fun. My main report is to the Director for Arts, Heritage and Tourism. So pre-COVID days, I organised her regional trips to visit stakeholders, and I'm still looking after her incredibly busy diary and inbox. But in the last month or so, I've also acquired a title of diary manager for the Commissioner for Cultural Renewal and Recovery. I think I got that right. It's a newly appointed position from our Secretary of State. He appointed Neil Mendoza, who is the Provost at Oriel College up at Oxford University, to come in as our Cultural Commissioner, and he's working with all our arts and cultural sectors in this post-COVID world. So he's also quite busy, and lots of the great and the good are trying to get time with him to talk to him and give him their plan, what they think the government should be doing for arts, theatre and the like.
Yeah, and your boss, your main boss, she's still been exceptionally busy during this time, hasn't she?
She has, not only on top of our normal directorate, the department had a bit of a restructure to cope with our COVID response. So she also became co-director for the Economic Response Directorate. So her meetings sort of like doubled in one day.
Every boss's dream. Every boss's dream.
Oh, I thought her diary was busy before COVID, but once this all kicked off, it went like she used to average 5 to 8 meetings a day. It was probably 10 to 14 a day in the peak of COVID.
Wowzers. That is, I mean, it's a lot for any exec or leader. But, you know, thankfully she's got you by her side to help navigate through all of that. So how have you found the kind of transition to working at home in terms of you, because your offices are in Whitehall?
Yes, we're Parliament Street is our actual address, so we're right down near Parliament Square. Working, no real difference. I mean, just support people the same way. My previous roles in Australia, I actually didn't have a lot of PA roles in Australia because, you know, when you'd go along to agencies to sign up, they'd put you through the typing. We not only did we have typing, but we used to have data entry tests as well to work out your keystrokes, as well as all your software package. So, yeah, so I used to come out with around 92 words per minute typing, and my data entry speed was something like 16,000 keystrokes an hour. So agent recruiters just used to see those speeds and go, no, we're going to put her in for data entry work. So, I mean, it was okay for a while. It was a bit of a novelty, but I just kept getting more and more data entry work that I used to start getting told, oh, you know, but you don't have recent experience. And, you know, when they'd fire me up, I'd go, well, I'd be tempted to go, well, whose fault is that? But I said, well, you know, they said, you haven't got recent experience. And I said, well, it's not like falling. It's like riding a bike. You don't fall off it. You can just get back on it again, and it's no different. But they used to do the old, well, the client wants someone with recent experience. And I used to get in a few stoushes with the recruiters trying to put my case forward, but they just wouldn't. But I did have probably about 3 main PA roles. The first one was as PA to 2 direct team leaders. We were in Telstra, which was the Australian equivalent to BT.
Yeah.
And our department looked after all the IT programs for Telstra, like the address books, and they had Telstra shops, so they had all their IT systems as well. So I worked for them for 2 years and did the standard PA duties, you know, diary, travel, drivers, travel expenses, purchase requisitions, diary management. So I was there probably 2 years, and at the time they were looking to go into a joint venture with IBM IBM were going to do Telstra's IT, so they decided to absorb our directorate over to them. So it then became a partnership, IBM GSA, which was Global Services, IBM Global Services Australia. So a part of that package was IBM said management could do their own admin. So, yeah. Because I was a temp at Telstra, I got terminated. So off I went, and then I sort of had done quite a few temp contracts, short-term ones, but I then got a job at Department of Main Roads. I sort of did a few little ones there, but then I became a research officer for a gentleman in the department who was doing the road cattle transport study of roads in Australia. So I used to have to pore over, prepare, go do research and find stats for him. But, you know, that wasn't enough for me. I was getting a bit low on work, so I sort of took over secretarial duties for some other people in the team. And there was also a PA who was the PA to our director. But then he was resigning. Well, No, he was transferring actually, and we got this new person in from the department, and he decided they were cutting down from 2 PAs to 1. So the other PA and I both applied, and the person, neither of us got the job. I mean, I thought she would have got the job because she was already in post. She thought I had a better chance of getting it. But instead, they got this other person in, this woman who had a master's in nuclear physics. So, which I can set fire to work of the best of me.
I am not discrediting that at all, but a master's in that.
It was purely to get her foot in the door.
Yeah, okay.
Like I ran into some former colleagues afterwards, and they said she was useless. And basically, she was only in the post for a little while when she was put into an engineer's position.
Yeah.
So it was purely to get her in, and the new director ran into me in the street one day, and he told me, "Oh, you did so well in the interview, Jackie." It was, and I'm like them muttering to myself, "Well, obviously not enough to get the job."
Do you think, I mean, looking back at that, do you think they were blindsided by that degree? I mean, I that master's, her having that it just kind of perhaps blindsided them a bit. It's hard to fathom whilst that there was 2 candidates who'd been undertaking PA roles.
I don't think
it's someone completely random.
Well, back then it wasn't like now. You see, you must have a degree. This was late 90s, and in Australia then there wasn't the demand that a PA must have a degree. So I think somehow they came across her and thought, we've got to get her in somehow.
Yeah.
And it was via the PA route. So, but around the time all that was going around, my old boss at Telstra, who are now at IBM, they admitted defeat to their director in Melbourne and said, we cannot do our admin, we're too busy, can we get someone in? And they relented and they said they could. So my old boss went to one of my friends who I'm still in contact with, and they said, "You're still in touch with Jackie?" And she said, "Yeah." I went, "Can you ask her if she wants to come back?" So she rang me up, and I went, "Yes, actually, my job's actually finishing up." But I said, "I'm actually going to New York for a couple of weeks in a month or whatever." And they said, "Yeah, fine, come back. You can go on your holiday and then just come back again." So I then went back there for another 2 years, and by then we went through Y2K. So I was also helping out the analysts printing out, doing Y2K testing. I think printing so much paper, I think if you went to hell on the basis of how much paper you printed out in your time, I think I'm a dead cert before reams of paper of all this testing I was doing. So we were doing that, and then I was taking minutes for another meeting for my other boss this day when the other one called all his staff in. So as I'm on my way out from my meeting, he called me into his office and he said, "Jack, I've just had to sack all my consultants because Telstra are cutting our budget. So if I can't afford all my computer programmers, I can't really justify having you." And I said, "Yeah, fine." The way it rolls. So I left that one, and then I had one other PA role at St. John's Cathedral, which was the main Church of England Cathedral in Brisbane. I was actually PA to the canon pastor, but I was also the wedding administrator. So I used to have to book couples in to meet with the canon pastor, do all their legal paperwork to be submitted to our registry of births, deaths and marriages, and prepare their service of order booklets. So I was probably there about 18 months. And other than that, I just did lots of data entry. That's
really interesting, though, that the switches between sectors you did. Did you feel like you did gain something out of every sector you worked in?
I think you do. I mean, that's why I sort of get rather irate when I read job interviews when it says must have legal experience, must have banking experience. But as a temp, you gain experience of having to learn different industries as you go into them. And I've worked for mining companies, banks, professional bodies, practically every state government and department in Queensland. I've worked for them. So I've worked for many different sectors. And even here, like my first job was in a legal department within the government.
Yeah.
But even then I said, I don't have any legal experience. And I said, doesn't matter. So you just sort of, I find you just pick up everything you need to know on the job.
When you were going through the kind of, you referred to you were temping quite a bit. Was that indicative of the Australian job market at that time, or was that a conscious decision by you to try a couple of sectors?
A bit of both. I started out temping. I'll just temp till I find the next permanent job. But I just kept finding myself in constant contract work. I'd finish one assignment on Friday and I'd have a new one on Monday. But then also I became a carer for my mother sort of towards the end of my career in Brisbane. And so I always used to have to be on call for her if she needed to go to the doctor because she was legally blind. So she couldn't find her way on her own. She wasn't confident to. So I always used to have myself available to take her to doctor's appointments or whatever. And then around that time also the market had changed. Like you couldn't bet on finishing one job on the Friday and having a new job on the Monday.
Yeah.
Recruiters were very much treating temp work as permanent roles. They'd have to put your name forward. Then you had to hope you'd be called up for an interview. And if you were interviewed, then you had to hope that you got the post. So it was a bit of both, really.
Yeah, and you touched on something there, that transition where you literally, we heard in when I was in the recruitment world, some markets around the world, especially parts of Asia Pacific, they were asking temps to undergo 3 interviews. For permanent jobs, obviously now that you probably could expect about 3 interviews for a permanent job, but that just seemed crazy for a temp role. And I remember it earlier on in my career where you could pick up some temp work even in between jobs. You could just literally have a phone call, send your CV over, but the market did really, really change, didn't it? And it became a lot more difficult to secure temporary work. And I think it still is, to be fair, and here in the UK.
And it's something that I don't really agree with because the whole thing of temporary, it's temporary. If you go to a role and they don't like you, well, the benefit of being a temp, they can just say, no, don't come back and get someone else.
Yeah.
So I was getting really disheartened with the temp sector in Australia before I left. Because in Australia we had Seek, which was the major job board in Australia, and I'd log on looking for work and I could see jobs advertised by agents that I was on the books, but no one was contacting me about the role. They just automatically just put it on Seek, and I'd ring them up and go, what about this job? Why didn't you contact me? But so I think my temping days are well and truly behind me now. I just don't think I could go through all of that.
Yeah, and I think a number of EP members could really relate to that, and it's definitely indicative to the British market as well. I'd even question a lot of the validity of roles that are even put up on Indeed.co.uk and various other job board websites, especially at the moment, whether they're actually even real jobs or just trying to kind of get you on the database.
Well, I think I busted an agency here doing that. When I was looking at leaving my last job, I saw this job and it sounded great. I contacted them about it. They called me in for an interview, testing, and when I said about that job, they didn't know anything about it.
Oh,
and
not good.
And they said, I think that's so-and-so's job. I think it's been filled. I went, okay. So about a week, never heard from him again. But a week later, I saw the ad with the same job advertised again. So me being me, I forwarded it to them, and I'm going, this is the job I was referring to. If it's still available, I'd like to be put forward for it. Never heard anything.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, I think, as I said, a lot of EPA members can relate, and a lot of peers probably in many countries undergoing that kind of bog standard recruitment process. It was something that drove me a bit potty during my career. So before we get on to the next stage of you kind of leaving Australia and moving to good old Blighty, let's go back to Jackie at schoal. What were your aspirations back then, Jackie?
I was
all sorts of dreams, haven't we? When
I had lots of ideas. I think at one stage I wanted to be a hairdresser, and my mother just went, "You do not want to be a hairdresser." And besides, I think now I can't even cut a straight line, let alone cutting anyone's hair. So after I got fed out my idea, I wanted to be a photographer, which is still a bit of my passion. You know, I go around playing constant tourist, photographing everything. And Mum sort of said, "Don't be ridiculous. There's no money in that." And then I think I wanted to be an archaeologist. And then I wanted to be, a vet. And my mum said, "That's fine, but you realise you'd have to put dogs down."
Yeah, that's the drawback there.
As you see, my mother was great at giving career advice.
Yeah.
And I actually, I laugh now, back in high school when I was 14, myself and 3 friends used to sit together, and we were talking about it, and one girl said, "Oh, I want to be a secretary when I finish school." And here's me going, "Oh, you're going to be replaced by computers." Oh, I tell you, I'd have to eat humble pie if I ever ran into her now. What do you do? Oh, I'm an EA. But I didn't.
You said that all those years ago. I wonder, where did you, what?
I have no idea where I got fed up, but at 14, this was in the 80s, I was like, yeah, you're going to be replaced by computers.
But then, that being said, there was, you speak to anyone that was kind of a teenager back then, they would say there was probably a lot of technology coming through then. You know, we had the Back to the Future films where we were going to have all these flying cars and...
Oh, yes, flying hoverboards. But in Australia, the education system is the earliest you can finish school is grade 10, which you get your junior certificate, or you go on to grade 12s and get your senior certificate. So I sort of thought, well, I'm going to go to uni. So I stayed on to grade 12, but in grade 10, you have to go for a week's work experience. So everyone's choosing the same things, TV stations, all the glamour jobs. But in the end, I got placed with a finance company in Brisbane helping out as a clerk typist. So I was there for a week. So, did that, whatever. So grade 12 came along. We had to fill out all our forms to nominate what courses we wanted to do at uni. And a few years later, I found it and went, "Oh, I dodged a bullet there," because I've had Bachelor of Economics. I can't remember what else, but the only thing slightly related to what I'm doing now was I did have as my very last choice was a Bachelor of Business Administration. But then when I finished senior and we got our exam results, and we went by TE scores to be admitted into uni then, and my TE score wasn't high enough to get into anything, because the high school I went to, during halfway through grade 12, we had to do something called I think they were called QSATs. And basically every senior student in Queensland had to do this test, and then they all do this marking, and it affects everyone's scores. So my school, allegedly, the year we did it, was top of the state. So if you were a high achieving student, your score went up. And if you're a below average student, it went up. But if you're a median student on the bell of standard deviation, your score went down. So I think my predicted score was like 810, which would have got me into something. But my score at the end, because we'd gone so well in these exams, my score was lower and it wouldn't get me into anything. So, dear old mum, right, you've got to go and find a job now. Bring up that fellow you did work experience with in grade 10. So begrudgingly, I rung him up. And he didn't have anything right away, but about 3 or 4 months later, he rang me and there was a job going as a clerk typist. So there I started my career. And that was my one and only permanent job in Australia.
Wow. So how long were you there for?
7.5 years.
And then you got the 7-year itch, as naturally does happen at 7 years.
Also helped the fact that I was bullied by our big boss and our operations manager. So at that time I started, because word processing started coming a thing. So we actually did get a word processor in our section. It was a Wang and it was the size of a small car. And I wasn't allowed to use it. But I went to a business school. It was the Serena Russo Business School. She was a failed legal secretary who started her own classes, and now she's a multi-millionaire. When Bill Clinton came to Brisbane, she paid tens of thousands of dollars to be able to sit at his table. So she made a real success out of herself. So I went to her business school and did Word Perfect for Windows and Windows 3.0. So
I love stories like that. We really, really do.
So the secretary to our state manager, who was also our receptionist, in her lunch break, she used to let me use our word processor for practice. So it was then that once I started using that, I knew I'd never get any experience using it on the job. So I started looking for something else, and it's when I left. And I swore never to work in finance ever again after that.
A lot of people can relate to having somebody that's perhaps bullied them through their career. Has that kind of stayed with you throughout your career, always in the back of your head of running into that sort of person again?
Oh, I actually did run into him one day in the streets of Brisbane. I'm walking down the street and he sees me and he throws himself in front of traffic and comes running up and goes, "Hi, Jax, how's it going?" I'm like, "Fine, Jeff." Kept walking, muttering to myself, "Don't call me Jax. Only my friends can call me Jax." So yeah.
And it's funny how people are when you've actually left the place and you run into them potentially, years down the line or not long after even. But I mean, hats off to you for kind of navigating through that period, because as we all know, workplace bullying isn't necessarily always taken seriously by a lot of employers, and because of the nature of our roles, it's not always easy to report the people that we work with for a variety of different reasons.
And I had the added pain of my mother going, thought I was mad because, when you're in a bank, you've got a job for life, which was the attitude. So, what are you doing giving that up? And I went, I can't do it anymore. And she later admitted that I did do the best thing. Yeah. But at the time, she'd given up a job for life in the bank.
Do you know what? That is really, really inspiring, Jackie, because that's exactly what was said to a lot of us growing up through the decades. You'll get in and that'll be your job for life. And, button down, put up and shut up. But you made a decision, that wasn't right for you. And frankly, I've always said during my career to friends and other peers, I'd rather collect dustbins, I'd rather clean toilets, I'd rather do anything. And all these roles actually I do admire that I've just mentioned, but I'd rather do anything than be around somebody like that again, because it's happened in my career a couple of times. And yeah, it can be really soul destroying, and there can be some emotional scarring for people, depending, on how many times it's happened to you and where it's happened to you and the effect of it.
It still has an impact on me, like any other boss. If they say, "Oh, can you come see me for a minute?" I'm automatically, "Oh my God, what have I done?" It's even with my current boss. We had an away day, and after it, she said, "Do you want to come over to VNA afterwards?" I went, "Okay," and then I'm thinking, "Oh my God, what have I done?" So it's just like that one experience all those years ago.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you've become, there's always this defensive mode, and it's self-preservation as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Going forward, you think, well, I got out of that situation, so I need to protect myself going forward.
Yeah.
But, all credit to you. I think it's really, really inspiring that you managed to get out of there in spite of your mum's advice. And I totally understand why she was saying that at the time, because that's what a lot of parents did. They wanted you to be in a nice, comfy career, company with good perks and potential good pension and bonuses, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So what happened next after that, career-wise?
Oh, pardon me. Well, I did go to another job straight away, but I didn't last very long in that one. It was a consulting company, and it was like really weird. They had word processing, but some documents I wanted in WordPerfect for Windows, formatted a specific way. Then the other ones I wanted in Word 3.0 a certain way, and I was always getting the two mixed up. And all the time I was thinking, why? Just choose one package and stick to it. But no, so it was like doing dicta typing, and which I didn't have a problem with. I just could never get my head around what documents I wanted in what format. So I got terminated there. And then I think it was towards the end of the year, and then it was in the January that I got the job at Telstra, and I think that's when I finally found my niche. It was a 12-month contract, and I was doing much more than typing. I was raising purchase requisitions, doing travel for our big boss, and taking on work of one of the supervisors, because let's just say he didn't have the greatest ethic in the world. So I found him giving more and more stuff to me, which was fine, because that's always my motto: never stick to your job description, always like try and take on more. So I was there then for 2 years. That's when I got put off for the merger, and I think I did a few more assignments. I'm just trying to get it in my head. I did probably about 2 years at Brisbane City Council in the school immunisation program. So they did baby immunisations, and then they had a school-based program. I worked on the school-based program. Again, it was mainly just inputting the parents' consent records into the system, registering all the vaccinations. But the following year, I got involved with the planning of it. I also trained the admin who were coming in to do the checking and to do the actually go out with the admin teams. So I did all the training for them. So I was there. It was about 2.5 years, and at the end, I just got completely sick of it. So I felt I needed a change, and obviously the market hadn't been too bad at this stage. So I just said, I'm going on a holiday and I'm not coming back. That's it. So, and true to form, I tend to get all the great places to work. They had a track record of whenever an administrator left, they were blacklisted from ever going back to work there.
My goodness, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I don't know.
In some sectors.
Yeah. I don't know, because I thought I was fine. But one of my good mates who worked with me went to another part of the council, and she rang me up after I left and said, "Have you got any work at the moment?" And I said, "No." She said, "Do you want to come over and give me a hand?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And she goes, "Okay, I'll tee it up." And she rang me up and she said, you wouldn't believe it. They didn't want me to take you on. I said, what? They blacklisted me? She said, sounds like it. But she said, I held my ground. She said, I don't care what you say. I've worked with Jackie. I know what she can do. I don't want anyone else. So they relented and I got in that time, but only because she knew me. So,
wow.
Yeah. And then I did another stint at MBF, which just as I was leaving were being taken over by Bupa. And I was in, again, human data entry machine. We were putting invoices into the system for doctors because the way they work, Medicare, which is sort of like the NHS, have a statement of fees. Like if you're going for a colonoscopy, you can only charge this amount. But doctors always charge, most of them charge X above what the fees were. So the insurance company had a plan where the patient never paid the gap. So we used to have to process the invoices, send them to Healthcare Australia, and the doctors would be reimbursed the gap fee from them. So, and volume was ridiculous. We'd often work 12-hour days, half days, Saturday. I mean, as a temp, it was great because you got overtime.
Yeah, clock in some hours, yeah.
And we worked one bank holiday, like our agricultural show. They said, if you want to come in to work, you can work, we'll pay you triple time. So I've worked there for a couple of years, but again, I was going on a holiday and I was burnt out. So I just said, I can't go back. Even though it's financially beneficial,
yeah,
I
just wasn't for you any longer.
No. And I think that was possibly around the time of the global financial crash.
Yeah.
So work was getting there was gaps between jobs. And then I resorted to taking on part-time work at the cathedral. So that I was working, I think, 2 days a week. But fortunately, they were also preparing for the consecration of the cathedral. They finally finished it. So they were having a big event for the consecration. So I got to help out on that. So I was getting extra days. And this was also around the time my mother died. And probably about a week before my mum passed, I got an email from a friend. He is a very famous musician in Australia, and he was in a very big band at that time. And he sent me an email, just said, can I have your phone number? I've got a favour to ask, but I've lost your number. So I sent it to him. And then I think a day or two later, my mum passed, and he emailed me back and he goes, oh, I've heard about your mum, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you a call in a week. So he did. And they were actually looking for someone. Their mothers and their management company had collated newspaper articles, photos, memorabilia covering the band's 20-year career. And they wanted an electronic archive of it sorted out. I didn't know at the time that they were actually looking at disbanding and were sort of organising final tours, and they put out a book. So unbeknownst to me at the time, a lot of what I was doing went into all these final products. So he rang me up and asked me if you wanted to do it. And I said, yeah, of course I'll do it. And he said, before your mum passed, I thought it would help you take your mind off your mum being sick. But he said, I think it's got an extra purpose of helping you take your mind off things again. Wow. So, and he said, oh, well, we'll pay you $26 an hour. Is that all right? And I went, yeah, it's more than what I'm getting in my day job. And he said, okay. So that took me 2 years in the end. So the days I wasn't at the cathedral, I'd work on that. But when the cathedral finished up, because after my mum died, probably a month later, they put me off. They said they were looking at restructuring their admin department. So I basically just worked full-time for the band, working from home. So I probably did that for about 2 years, and that took me up until my trip over here as a holiday in 2012, which set the balls in motion for the big move.
So you book a holiday to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
How long was the holiday? Where did you come when you came here for the holiday?
It was the 9-week Jackster's European Odyssey. So it was. I've got family here. My dad was Irish. That's how I've got residency here. My dad was still an Irish citizen when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
That entitled me to have an Irish passport. So thanks to the act prior to founding of a republic, we were given freedom of movement in the UK. So that's how I can legally live here. So I hadn't seen my family since 2004, I think. And at the time, every 4 years, we were having family reunions. So 2012 was a family reunion year. So it was like alternated between Ireland and America, where the bulk of a lot of our cousins are. So 2012 was an Ireland year. So I said, okay, I'll come over for it. So I was in Ireland, I think, for about a week. I think total up, I was in London for 2 weeks. And then I did a month tour around one of those Trafalgar. It's Wednesday, it must be Berlin. I did a month tour around Europe, and I was back in London a few days, and then I was off for a fortnight around Spain. So it was when I was in London that I realised that this was home. So I said to my cousin, I think I'll go back home and sort of think about getting all my affairs in order and sell the house and come over. So I didn't think it would happen for another few years, but just as I was coming over for my holiday, we'd had a state election, and over here we've got PERDA. In Australia, X number of weeks before an election, the government goes into caretaker mode. They can't do anything, no new policies or anything like that, no recruitment. So I wasn't getting any contract work through the government leading up to my trip. So I didn't have that much work before I went over. Thankfully, I had the band work. So while we'd had the election, we had a new government. And while I was away, I was talking to a friend back in Brisbane, and I said, how's the work situation going over there? And she said, I don't want to ruin your holiday. And I said, no, tell me now if I'm coming back to a disaster, I want to be ready for it. And she said, yeah, the new premier hadn't lifted the recruitment freeze. There was still a freeze. This was something like 3 months after the election. Mm. And I think I don't think it happened before I came back, but he sacked something like 17,000 public servants.
Whoa.
So I then got to the state where there wasn't much work beforehand, and then I found myself competing with all these public servants who were looking for work as well. So I was picking up odd bits and pieces, and I had a mortgage over my house, which is a long story in regards to my mother's estate. So I sort of thought, okay, if I don't get work soon, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. So I think the time's now. So I rang a real estate agent and said, I want to put the house on the market. So I put the house up the market, and it sold on the day it went on. The universe was aligning. The day they had a open house, the day before it went on sale, I had to get out of the house. Apparently quite a few people came through it. It turns out the buyer came through it on that day, and there was a bidding war between two Chinese investors. So house sold for about 40,000 more than the agent told me I'd get for it. So I sold up, and that was March, and I flew out of Australia on the 29th of April. So, and some of my dearest friends were going to me, "Are you sure you want to do this? You know, are you sure you want to move to another country?" And I went, "Oh, it's not like I'm going to Russia where I don't speak a word of Russian and don't know anyone. You know, it's Ireland, it's London. I have family, speaks English, you know. No, not worried at all." And
that was that 2012 that you made the move over?
2013.
2013, yeah.
Oh,
So we were still in recession, but we were riding high off the back of the Olympics in 2012, the Queen's Jubilee. I remember it's hard to believe it's like 7 years ago now, but things were starting to feel pretty good, apart from somewhat economy, but it was starting to pick up a bit.
Yeah, so
So
I rocked up here. I found a place to live within about 2 days. I'd sort of booked into a B&B. My family couldn't fit me into their house, so I booked into a B&B for a couple of days. Found somewhere to live pretty quickly. And I think for the first little bit, I just sort of played tourist and sort of wandered around. I knew the city pretty well, but instead of like having a plan, I just get off the bus somewhere and just start walking and discover all these shortcuts to places where I'd probably normally go a different, longer way. And then every now and again, I'd sort of think, I better look for work. So, I'd gone and seen some agencies, and surprise, surprise, nothing ever sort of came out of them. But I kept persisting. I organised for someone to professionally write my CV. I don't really know if it helped either. But I arrived here April, and I think early July I got a phone call from an agency. And they said, "Oh, we've got this job at the Treasury Solicitors. Would you be interested?" And they told me a bit about it. So I said, "Yeah, okay, yep, put me forward for it." So I went for a job and I got it. Probably also helped that my original UK boss, the big joke in the office was she always employed Australians or Kiwis. So, but I had the badge of honour of being the first ever Australian admin, because they were always Australian or Kiwi lawyers. But as far as I know, I'm the first and only Australian admin person in what became the government legal department. So, yeah, so I worked there for nearly 5 years. I temped the first 2 years, and just up to, remember the great jewellery heist at Hatton Garden?
Yeah.
We worked on 1 Kemble Street, which was just near Kingsway, which was not very far away. And my job was becoming they were doing a recruitment drive for admin permanent positions. So I was in two minds whether I wanted to apply or not, but my boss only had one plan for me, and that was for me to become a permanent employee. So there was no such thing as failure. She went through my CV, my applications, we had rehearsals. So I got a post, and I was becoming permanent on the 31st of March 2015. So that was the day of the heist. There was a fire. It was one of our porters said they were walking past the building and they could see smoke coming out of the grates. I had a late lunch that day, and as I came out to go to prep, there was fire trucks and everything nearby. And I thought, interesting. So that day we'd been having internet troubles and that, so it all made perfectly sense later, but we're all sitting there and suddenly our computers all just crashed and came up again, and there was just this communal ooh. And then we heard we were sort of two buildings. We heard the other building were being evacuated. So the head of the admin team who sat next to me rang up reception and went, "Are we getting evacuated?" No sooner had she hung up, but our evacuation alarm went off. So evacuated. We ended up, and I sort of thought, I was really, because we were really busy at work that week, and I was like sort of kicking myself that I was going permanent because I wouldn't get any overtime. But after the fire evacuation and everyone was sent home for 2 weeks, I'm just like going, yay, I'm getting paid for this. But well, everyone was getting 2 weeks off, though. I got called down to our emergency centre in Croydon for a week because they were all meeting, and they said, okay, if someone's going to come down, they said, okay, we need a PA down there to do all the casework. And my boss said, Jackie will go. So I got asked if I wanted to go to Croydon. So in my mind, I was going, no. But down I went. So worked in Croydon. And then it was my boss announced to me that she'd got a judicial post and she was leaving. And it was at that point that I sort of went, well, if you're going, I'm going too. I'm not sticking around here. Unfortunately, at her new post, she wasn't allowed a PA. She said if I was, I'd take you. But I said, well, if you're going, I'm going. And she sort of convinced me that I needed to stay because our new manager had no experience in our area of law, didn't know our department. And she said, you're the only one that knows how the department runs. So she said, it's bad enough of department as it is that I'm leaving. So I think you need to stay. So I stayed, and I probably lasted another 2 years after she left. And at this stage, I'd had enough. So I started looking around, and a colleague was also sort of looking, and she knew I wanted to get into DCMS. And she found, and she sent it to me, it was a job ad for Matt Hancock's diary manager when he was the Minister for Digital. So, oh yeah, okay. I tried. Got an interview. So I interviewed with his private office. Pardon me. And then I got called back again to meet the minister. So I got taken over to the House of Commons and had my meeting with him. Apparently it was myself and two other girls. Sorry, folks, it's not coronavirus. Anyway, he chose another person. So they asked me if I wanted to stay on the reserve list, and I said, yes, please. So I then got called up to meet someone else for a PA post. They didn't choose me. I then met someone else. No luck there, but then I met my current boss. And
so fourth time lucky.
So third time lucky on the reserve.
Yeah.
So
I will say on Matt Hancock, last year I was up training some EAs in Glasgow, and I was fast asleep at the hotel, and about 2 o'clock in the morning the fire alarm went off. And you know when you're kind of like, is this for real? Like, has someone drunk just triggered this off? And I think all of us took way longer than we should have done exiting the hotel. But we get outside, and there's Matt Hancock staying in the same hotel in his pajamas. I mean, it's the middle of the night. We've just been evacuated. And there was a rumour going around at the time that the alarm had been set off because Matt was staying at the hotel. I don't know whether that was true or it was drunk revellers. Who knows? But it was a very interesting experience standing outside a hotel. And there was a Kanye West lookalike as well, and people were in their kind of sleep and haze trying to figure out whether this was really Kanye. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure he'd be at the premiere. But I'll always remember Matt being outside that hotel now.
Something unforgettable.
Yeah. I mean, do you know what, Jackie? You've had an extraordinary career and, worked across so many different sectors. You've seen a lot of evolution of the role as well, going across all those different sectors and economic uncertainty at different points through the last few decades. I mean, it's just really incredible. And to make that move, I know a lot of Australians have come and moved over to the UK, but to me, I still think it's a really, really big thing, making a move to another country. And it's something I thought about a lot in my career, but then I found I was actually really happy in London and my career was going where I wanted it to be. So I didn't want to kind of tempt fate, as it were. But you've just done it really kind of successfully. And it is a brave thing to move to another country. I mean, obviously it helps that we speak the same language. Always a good one there. But in terms of kind of looking back, are there any lessons you've learned over that time in all the different sectors and temping to permanent roles and the people you've worked with, the different bosses? Is there anything key to have come out of it to you?
I think I've learnt something from every job I've been in, even if it's I never want to work in this type of industry ever again. But I think you do, like working in different sectors, you do pick up in skills relating to that sector, which I think, like personal assistants, EAs, we are the truly portable position. We can, despite what recruitment agencies may say, we can work in any industry without really knowing what that industry is. I mean, sure you'll pick up different things in each department, in each sector you work in. But for me, that's just growth, because you want to go into another position where you don't necessarily know everything.
Makes it more exciting and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go into a position where you know absolutely everything and is theoretically just a continuation of your last role. So I've found I have always learnt something in every role I've been in.
And we're coming right to the end of our interview now, and I've really loved the last hour with you. But is there any kind of best practice tips you want to share? Any words of advice for any budding PAs or perhaps PAs that have stagnated in their careers at the moment?
Oh, well, I'm a fan of keeping lists. In my current role, like I'm constantly getting interrupted. So if I don't have a list of what I'm doing, if I get distracted and I go, oh, where was I up to? Oh yeah, okay. But generally, don't be afraid to take on extra tasks. Don't stick to your job description. Always be willing to show that flexibility, that you're willing to take on extra things. And I know I'm preaching to the converted with the EPAA members, but continual learning. Yeah. Always look for something to learn.
And I think that is very, very wise words and so important, especially right now, because of everything that's been happening and the transitions have been made to working from home for so many. Some were facing redundancy and would be moving to a new sector soon, possibly. But what I've kind of got from you as well is you've got so much resilience, an incredible amount, and determination as well to keep going for a role. I want to work in that government department and keep putting yourself forward for different roles. I really, really admire that about you. I think your whole background is just incredible and really, really inspiring. And I'm honoured that you joined EPAA and have been such an active member with us. And I did, like I have with all the members so far, I've put you totally in the spotlight and in a perhaps uncomfortable place. But I think these stories have to be shared and these lessons learned and best practice, because I think that's how we'll grow as a profession. But Jackie, I want to thank you so much for the last hour. You can chill out in a mere moment, relax, glass of wine or gin. I've got my ginger pepper tea.
I'm drinking something stronger than that, Vic.
I wish I could, but I've got to be up at 1 a.m. So illumination. But as I said, thank you again, Jackie, and I look forward to seeing EPA members' feedback. I know they'll be discussing this in the Facebook group over the coming days.
I know.
At the
I'll
recording.
go back and see how many people were watching me and go, ah!
You did say there is a little friend down here who he has been appearing at my feet.
Rossi!
Now, he's not made an appearance. Come here. Good boy. Okay. He's going to make a little appearance to finish off.
Oh, EPA ladies and gentlemen will be
Say
proud.
hello.
Oh, hello, Rossi.
Rossi, say hello. He's a big boy now, Jax.
He's getting very big.
Yeah, definitely. You're the first interview he's popped up in. He's been at my feet for quite a lot of it. So
I'm honoured.
Paula, he is huge. I mean, seriously, he is. I'm struggling to pick him up now.
You need a little buggy for him now.
Oh, there's some lovely comments coming through, Jackie, on what a fab. I'm putting some of them up for show now. Thank you, ladies, for a fab interview. Hope everyone has a lovely evening. And then we've got another comment here. Thank you for an inspiring interview. And some lovely messages of support from. And there's Paula Harding. Well done, Jackie. Well, this is why I kind of wanted to do these interviews so that we could showcase, a variety of backgrounds, and we've definitely had that from you. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Relax.
I will. Thank you. I'll have another drink now
with you. Well, I don't blame you. I would if I could.
I'll have one for you, Vic.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. Please do. Thanks again, Jackie, and take care, everyone. And our next interview should be later on this week. So all that remains is for me and Jackie to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.